Let's shake off all of that vulnerability. Hello, my name is Adriana and this is my monthly reading wrap-up for May. So as per usual, we will start with my stats. I read a total of 11 books in May, which that's a lot for me. Personally. With my eyeballs, I read 2,448 pages, I listened to 36 hours worth of audiobooks, and my average page length was 349.7 pages. You can see my ratings breakdown here as well, but my average rating was 3.78. So as far as my sources for these books, 4 of them came from the library, 2 of them I bought, 3 of them came from the publisher, 1 I already owned, and 1 I borrowed. And then this month, my genre breakdown was actually pretty heavily favored in one direction, that direction being fantasy. 5 of my books were fantasy, 2 were nonfiction, 2 were literary fiction, 1 was a mystery thriller, and 1 was a historical fiction. So before we jump into the book by book breakdown, please consider liking and commenting on this video and subscribing to my channel if you like bookish things. So we will go in chronological order of when I read the books, even though my pile over here is in the wrong order. So we're just gonna grab the book off the bottom, because you know, why set yourself up for success when you can just be a demon of chaos? First book I read, or I guess first book I finished in May, I read most of this in April, is Song of Silver Flame Like Night. This is actually a part of a vlog, so I will link that vlog somewhere and down below so you can check that out. Overall, I enjoyed this story. I did have some issues with it. It is a really good criticism of European colonialism in Chinese-coded Fantasyland. I really enjoyed the characters we followed. We followed a young woman, Zen, I think it was. Oh shoot. No, Lan. Her name is Lan, his name is Zen. So we follow 2 characters who end up getting kind of stuck together through a mutual connection, and there is a magic school, which I love. It's kind of a traditional kind of fantasy story, and the stakes got very, very big at the end of the book, and so I'm very excited to pick up the next one just to kind of see. We had a very large elevation in stakes. So I am very excited to check that out at some point, but I mostly love this because it's a beautiful Illumicrate edition. Look at those sprayed edges. Look at this naked hardback. It is incredible. Like I said, I have much more in-depth thoughts and feelings in that vlog, but overall, I think I gave this like a 3-star. Like, it was fine. I had some issues. I will be continuing on because I do like the story and the characters, and I'm hoping that with the second book, some of the issues I felt in this book are resolved. The next book I read was The Choice by Nora Roberts. This was the 3rd book in the Dragonheart Legacy series trilogy, and I loved this trilogy. This is just such a good comfort story. Like, it's just so sweet and just chill, and like there's enough stakes to make the plot feel important, but like, you know, the good guys are gonna win. It's just that kind of story where like you're never that concerned for anybody, and that's like one slight criticism I have against the trilogy. At the end of the second book, I believe it was either at the end of the first or the second book, the author could have made a choice to kill off a certain character that I think would have really benefited the story, but have been like devastating to the reader. And instead of taking that, I think, correct story choice, she chose to just like give the reader what they want and killed like a tertiary character. So like the character that would have been devastating was like a secondary character. It wasn't one of like the main perspectives we were following, but it is a character that you get like connected to. And instead of doing that secondary character, she like went one step further and kind of did someone we didn't really care about or know that well. So, I mean, it's a story that doesn't take a lot of risks. It's kind of like you get what you get, and it's fun, and it's silly, and it's a good time. It's a young teacher hating her life. She is covering up who she is as a person, just trying to blend in, super meek. She discovers this portal while she's taking a eat, pray, love trip to Ireland and gets sucked into this magical world. And it turns out she has an entire like bloodline and connection to this magical world, and it's great, and she's the main character, and it's just fun. It's just a fun series. And if you're just looking for something fun and dragons and hunky men and gay best friends, you gotta go with, it's just great. It's just great. It's just a good, happy time, which we love. And I forgot to mention, I gave this 4 stars. But overall, I give the series a must read if you just want a chill time. So the next book was actually an audiobook, and that was the Bandit Queens. I listened to this for the Silly Goose book club hosted by Noelle 7 Pages, and this was another kind of silly, goofy time. It follows this woman, I think in her like late 30s, in an Indian village, and one day her husband just kind of up and left, but everyone assumed that she killed her husband. So the whole village kind of operates under this presumption that she is a murderer, basically. And that mostly works for her. She's kind of introverted. She doesn't really want to vibe with people. She and her husband never had children, so she's kind of doubly ostracized that she's not a mother. And, you know, people think she's a murderer. And one day in her lone group, one of the women approaches her and asks her for help in murdering her husband, and a whole bunch of hijinks ensue. So this is kind of like a dark comedy, but it's a fun time. It's just chaos. It is chaos incarnate. So many things are going wrong in trying to kill this husband, and you can just envision. It's got kind of the same pitch as Finley Donovan is Killing It, but I think this is structured better and in a much more believable way. So I gave this 3.5 stars. The next book I read is Atalanta, and I'm noticing now that like a lot of these books are kind of fitting into just the silly, goofy vibes theme. This is definitely a very, very vibey book, which kind of surprised me, but it shouldn't. So Jennifer Saint has also written Electra and Ariadne. Ariadne, definitely no thoughts, just vibes. Electra, some thoughts, more thoughts than vibes. And then this is back to no thoughts, just vibes. So the story of Atalanta is from Greek mythology. She is a princess who isn't wanted by her parents, gets exposed on a mountain, and then gets adopted by a bear. So a bear raises her for a while, and then she is once again kind of adopted by Artemis and kind of accepted into this greater followers of Artemis group. They just live in the woods and they hunt and they hang out and they swim in springs. So basically the whole first part of the book is just her living in the forest with other women and just having a great time. And because she's kind of grown up in this strenuous way, I don't know, strenuous isn't the right word, active. She lives a very active lifestyle and has grown very big and strong, and Artemis decides that she should become a hero like the other great heroes of Greece, and tells her to go off to one of the Greek cities to join Jason and the Argonauts on their quest for the Golden Fleece. So she does that, and you know, she's fairly naive. She's getting on this boat full of 50 men, so you can imagine how that goes for her, and you just kind of follow her through navigating this new world, these new expectations, how to be a hero, what does a hero mean for someone like her. And then the last part of the book is, of course, her dad realizing that she's a big hero now, so he wants her back, but he needs to get her married off still, even though she's a big, great hero. And she tells him that I will only marry a man who can beat me in a foot race, so it becomes a big kind of Olympic game sort of event. All these men come to race her. Nobody's winning, and I'm not going to spoil the ending for you because I really do like the ending of this book. I think it is just such a sweet, sweet ending. I also read this in that same vlog as Song of Silver Flame Like Night, so I will link that again. It is already linked. It's already linked. So you can check out my deeper thoughts and feelings there. But I gave this 5 stars just based off vibes. Like, I have no real reason for it. It probably doesn't deserve 5 stars, but I love it. and that's okay sometimes. The next book I read was Now Is Not the Time to Panic. I read this for the Shelf This book club hosted by Is Bailey Reading, and this was the pick from Ruby Red. And I had a very contrarian opinion about this book to the rest of the book club. The rest of the book club adored this book. It follows two teenagers in, I think, like the late 60s who create this piece of art that kind of spurs on a greater movement and kind of spreads through the country, which is a very impressive feat before the internet, and just kind of follows their journey into adulthood and how this event affected the both of these teenagers. And like I said, everybody else in the book club absolutely adored it. I did not love it. And I've done a lot of introspection as to why. And I'm about to get like vulnerable on this video. So if you don't want to watch that, just skip to the next book. I gave this 2.5 stars. So if you don't want to see me be vulnerable, just skip to the next book. It's totally fine. I'm not offended. But I think for me personally, call it older sister with a Pisces rising, call it masked neurodivergence. I am not someone who has allowed myself to really feel my feelings for basically my entire life. I don't like feeling big emotions, especially big emotions that I can't rationalize well. Basically, I rationalize away all my feelings. And I'm getting better at it now. Better at not doing it. I'm getting better at allowing myself to feel my feelings. But when I was a teenager especially, I was a steel trap and would not allow myself to feel feelings. So when I read books like this where it really focuses on teenagers having big feelings about silly things, it really forces me to look at a place I don't really want to look. I've packed all that up in a nice little suitcase and I just want to leave it in the closet. And I don't really want to look into it. So I think that's why I responded so negatively to this book. It's because of my own personal trauma, and that's fine. It wasn't for me. Let's shake off all of that vulnerability and move on to the next book that I loved, and that is Birdgirl. I received this as an ARC from the publisher Celadon. They sent it to me like a year after it was published, so like they were just sending out ARCs just to send out, just to offload inventory basically. But oh wait, no, it just came out like last month. Oh, it did not come out that long ago. I'm not a very good reviewer. It's fine. This book, this memoir, so good. It follows a young woman, even at this stage, she's probably only like 22. She obviously talks about her life. She grew up in this family that was really into ornithology, and that was kind of their whole thing, was bird watching. And so she did a ton of traveling around the globe for these big bird watching trips. So she talks about how that really influenced her view on the world and really got her into eco-activism and humanitarian efforts, being able to do all this traveling and see all these different places. And she also really delves into a lot of the mental health issues that her mother experiences, I'm assuming still experiences, and how it affected their whole family unit. I chose not to rate this one, but I really like it. It's just, it feels weird to like rate someone's life story, so like I try not to do it, but like you should read this book on the DL. Very good. She, I think, got kind of overshadowed in her activism efforts because she kind of came up at the same time as Greta Thunberg, which obviously everybody knows who Greta Thunberg is. As much as we all love Greta, she's out there doing the work, putting in the effort and the time. I really appreciate Maya's message as a more humanitarian focused, nature focused, more balanced approach. I don't need to compare women. That's stupid. Why am I doing that? They're both great, but I love this book. Read it, please. The next book I read was Spells for Forgetting. I read this as a part of a NetGalley ARC reading vlog. I know this came out a long time ago. I let my NetGalley ARC archive a long time ago. But this was kind of the same way Dragonheart Legacy is kind of an average fantasy, this is also an average fantasy, but less fun. And I guess I wouldn't even describe this as much of a fantasy. It is definitely more of a mystery kind of book with some magical elements. And it was just kind of boring. Like, there wasn't enough magic. All of the information was released to us way too slowly. We spent way too much time with these characters just being angry at each other and just not talking to each other. So 14 years before the time of this book, a young woman was murdered on an island off the coast of Washington State, and the presumed murderer was one of her friends, but they could never prove it was him. So he and his mom kind of packed up and left this island, even though their family had been on it for like generations. And again, like I said, we are 14 years past that. The man now is coming back to spread the ashes of his mother on this island that he grew up on and she raised him on. And that kind of spirals into this mystery getting churned back up and figuring out what actually happened. Everybody has little bits of information and no one really talked to each other. And it's fine. It's fine. You don't really need to read it. I think I gave it a 3. Now that I'm talking about it, I kind of want to bring that down to like a 2. There's not a lot there to really grab you. But the opposite of that, a book with tons of things that grab you, is Gold Diggers. This book is being slept on. Although, I don't know, when did this book get published? This book was published in 2021. I was on BookTube. I was plugged into the book internet in 2021 and no one was talking about this, and I'm upset if anybody read this and wasn't screaming about it because it is so good. So the first half of this book follows a immigrant community in a suburb of Atlanta, and they are just, you know, a bunch of young Indian kids going through middle school, high school in the Bush era, and they're just doing their best. We follow the perspective of a young boy, and he kind of has like a maybe crush on like this neighbor girl, and they like hang out a lot and they're kind of friends, but you know, it's kind of like, you know how that all works. Girl next door, whole thing. And it turns out Girl Next Door has a little magical secret. She and her mom brew this special lemonade that allows you to kind of skim off some of the ambition of the people around you. So the brewing of this lemonade causes a pretty tragic event in their community, and it kind of causes a big rift in their relationship, and they kind of stop talking. And then we jump 10 years ahead. Neil, our main character, is kind of a burnt out graduate student at Berkeley, and then he kind of gets back in touch with neighbor girl, and more things happen. I don't want to spoil anything because I really do think you should go out and get this book. It is so relatable and so funny, but just crazy. Like, again, silly, goofy time, so much fun. I really do think you should read this. I don't know what else to say. Like, I feel like I'm saying a lot of the same stuff for all these books, but I really did have a really good reading month. And I gave this 4.5 stars. The next book, I know I've said like a lot of these you should go out and read, but like if you take one book away from this wrap up, this is the one. Like, this is the one. And that is Startstruck by Serafina El-Badri Nance. And this is the book. This is the moment. This is it. She's the best. This is another memoir of a slightly older woman. Not too old. We are the same age. She is an astrophysicist, astronaut, and another large part of her story is she was diagnosed with the BRCA2 genetic mutation that severely increases your chance for a lot of different cancers. So she made the decision to get a double mastectomy as a preventative measure and kind of documented her journey with that through social media, which is really what kind of blew up her presence, and I think is a large focus on the second half of her memoir. But the first half of her memoir is just growing up in this kind of STEM culture. I know I felt it of you need to, you know, be a woman in STEM and do better than everybody else and push yourself to do the thing. I don't, it's good. It's good. But like, it's good. I'm not doing this book a very good service, but I do think you really should read it. The next book I read was YN. I listened to this as an audiobook, also for the Silly Goose Book Club. This one, I don't really know. I didn't rate it. I don't know what to think of it. The book club discussion hasn't happened yet, so like, I really don't know what to think of it. I don't have thoughts. It's just a weird trip of a time. It follows this young woman from Berlin who gets kind of sucked into the fan culture of this boy band and starts writing fan fiction and becomes kind of obsessive. But it's really like dreamy, and sometimes it just kind of switches into like a fanfic without really telling you it's doing that. And I don't know. I don't even know if, like, maybe all of this was fanfic. I have no idea. It's just really strange. And like I said, I didn't rate it because I don't know what happened. I listened to it, I ingested it, and I don't even know what I'm tasting when it comes to this story. But I think I'm excited to watch this book club discussion because I just want to know what other people's feelings were if they kind of figured out what was going on in a way I didn't. Alright, and the last book I read was also a part of that NetGalley vlog, and that was Clytemnestra's Bind. As much as I've loved like almost all the books on here, this one was not one of them. It is the story of Clytemnestra, which I have read many, many times. Hey, ow, ow. Why'd you do that? Come here. Ugh. I have read it many, many times, and I do think this one was doing something a little bit different and interesting and really focusing on Clytemnestra's journey as a mother, as opposed to, you know, starting in childhood and her relationship with her sister Helen. This kind of jumps right into her journey with motherhood and marriage and kind of how all of that has defined her. It is the first in a series. I do think I will continue on. I will at least give it one more book just to kind of see what's up. But I didn't super love it. So if you are a Greek mythology fan, I would say maybe skip this one. I also did mention this in the vlog, but it does include a lot of like really in-depth Greek mythology knowledge that you might not know if you're not like a big Greek mythology nerd, like not into like the actual religious practice of Greek mythology. It might be a little confusing. I don't know. This is not one I would recommend, but if you want to try it, if you read it, I'm not going to say it was bad, but I just personally wouldn't recommend it out to people. Those are all of the books I read. It was a great reading month. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what your thoughts and feelings were. Please, please, please go get Startstruck and read it. I need to gush about this book with other people. And thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.